and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. I got to tell you, starting this Memorial Day weekend, tragic, horrible, just in a 72-hour period, according to the folks at the Gun Violence Archive. Just in that 72-hour span, there were at least 14 mass shootings and over 300 shooting incidents across the country. It seems that our well-regulated militia is in desperate need of some regulation. It seems that the Memorial Day festivities in Oklahoma, a house party in Philadelphia, graduation ceremony in Alabama. I mean, you could go on all across this country. Our well-regulated militia not doing well. And as someone sent me, interesting question, said a well-regulated militia attacked an elementary school, killing 19 students and 2 adults. If you want to argue it wasn't a well-regulated militia that attacked the school and instead an individual, then you already understand the difference between what the Constitution says and what you want it to say. And and I thought about that, and you go, there's some divide on what we want, what we believe, and what we want, and what it's supposed to be. And on both sides, you have extremes. I've got friends who should be no guns at all, and I'm not there. You've got people on the other side. There should be no restrictions on guns. No, nothing at all. In fact, everyone should have guns, and everyone should be carrying, and everyone should be afraid. And look, it's going to come out in legislation. And this is where the right does it much better than the left. Ohio, right now, as we speak, they're debating a piece of legislation in their House Bill 99. That is going to say any adult in any school can carry a gun as long as they have a whopping 2 hours of training. Count them. 1, 2 hours of training. Now, to be fair, that's 1-2 hours training than more than most gun owners have. So it's something. But here's the interesting point. What we're seeing coming out of Uvalde, Texas, the fact that the police department waited over an hour before they went into the school. And I got to be honest, I don't know why that whole police department hasn't been fired. I don't know why they haven't walked all of them off the job and posted job applications for all of them. Maybe could have brought some teachers in that. Teachers are going to have some summer jobs because evidently, we're going to give them guns and they're going to be able to stop this because evidently our police department not doing such a great job. But I look at this and, oh, by the way, if I could just take a step away from that for a second. The Uvalde Police Department and the school district, the school district police department, evidently no longer cooperating with the probe, the investigation into the shooting. Wait a second. You mean the police aren't talking to the police? which goes back to what I tell my kids all the time. You never talk to the police. It's not in your interest. And even the police evidently know this because they know they're wrong. Now, I go back. The right does this so much better. Whopping 2 hours of training. 2 hours of training. We're going to put, oh my gosh. I'm thinking about, go back to your own school experience and then think about all of the adults that were in that building. Now imagine all of them having guns. Let that play out for a second. And then imagine what they would do in a moment of crisis. Let that spin for a second in your head. And now imagine Ohio wanting to do that throughout the entire state and thinking somehow that's going to keep us safe. Because again, it can't be the gun. It's not the fact that we're not a well-regulated militia. We're not regulated at all. Now Democrats are going to try and move some legislation. We'll see. California's got a piece of legislation I think is interesting, that they want to go after gun companies' marketing. Smart. It's what they did when they went after the tobacco companies. Tobacco companies were marketing to children. Because, I saw this picture today on Twitter of a mother taking her infant who couldn't even crawl and lining the infant up with a sniper rifle. I mean, the kid has no idea what it is. I mean, couldn't be more than 6 months old. And posing the child with a sniper rifle. You want to talk about grooming? That's grooming. But this piece of legislation that they're talking about in California would go after these companies that are marketing to children. You go, they don't market to children. Yeah, they do. It's Assembly Bill 1594, if you want to look it up. But the article I was reading on it pointed out that there's a Utah company called We1 Tactical, WEE number 1 Tactical. And We1 Tactical, like wee little one, like a wee child. We1 Tactical makes a product called the JR-15. It's a ripoff. It's a smaller version of the AR-15. Their tagline, their promotional pledge, is it looks and feels just like mom and dad's gun. It's a smaller version of the AR-15 for kids, targeted specifically for the kiddies, because you want to look like mom and dad, so that you can have those cute photos like Thomas Massey and Lauren Boebert and all the other gun fetishists. Because, what does a 5-year-old want more than anything in life? A gun like mom and dad, so they can go kill stuff. Classmates, maybe. Now, look, I'm not an anti-gun person, but this seems a bit much. Seems like a fetish. They're also going after the other marketing exploits of ghost guns and bump stocks and stuff like that, since that's the only way that you can hold gun manufacturers at all accountable in this country, because they have special status. You can't sue them for any of the crimes that are committed with their guns, but maybe this is the way forward. I don't know. Now, what the right is going to do and what they do masterfully, and you got to give them credit, they are going to kick and scream and they're going to carry on. Mo Brooks, for instance, was on Fox News saying that he opposes any restriction on guns, even the military stuff. No restrictions, because they're going to need them. They're going to need them to take back the country. And you go, are you calling for armed insurrection? I mean, is this a not so veiled call to the fetishists to take up arms and water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants and patriots? Is this what this is, Mo? Because it kind of sounds like it. And again, the left doesn't do this kind of stuff as well. I think they're getting a little bit better. I mean, I think the Beto thing, I think some people are finally fighting the fight where they have to. But the right does this so much better. And I point to, someone sent me this group from Missouri, the Show Me State. And please, Missouri, show me you're not crazy. But it's this group called the Liberty Alliance. Because who could be against liberty? But they claim that they exist solely to fight for conservative values wherever they are under attack. And what they've got is a map of Missouri. And in there are places where they've put little pins and little addresses so that concerned conservatives like themselves can find the woke-tivists. Because evidently the woke-tivists they're out to destroy the great state of Missouri. Now, I look at this and I'm going, I don't quite get where you're going, and I don't quite get the whole, woke thing. What you're going for, but they have a woke heat map. And I'm not quite getting that. Other than this is wherever there are woke people, they want to pay attention to them. Hot spots for the woke-tivists. And I guess I started thinking about this. Maybe this is the new war on terror. It's George Bush had, anything that they didn't like, any group they didn't like, they threw into, we're just fighting the war on terror. Any of the others, anybody who questioned them, anybody they didn't like, anybody whose beliefs they didn't like, they were in that group. We're fighting the war on terror. And if you're either with us or against us. This is kind of that feel. So if you don't agree with them on, if you're woke, you must be one of the other. So I'm thinking, this war on woke is today's war on terror. It's an excuse to attack anything they don't like and everything. So today's groomers and woke are the people that they're going to attack. And yet, oddly enough, the groomers are they. Now, when I looked at the map, one of the things that struck me is I was surprised. I was surprised that they didn't have little crosshairs, because it's what they really mean. This is the scary part of what these calls to action are really about. We're going to put your name and your face on something to intimidate you, to silence you, so that all of the good conservatives can begin to attack. And I went to their website to check out the woke map, to find where the woke heat was. And I looked up what the group was. It's a young guy looking for a job more than anything, and to spread some hate. But they said that the group was formed by a group of concerned citizens in order to give Missourians a place to stand together, to promote conservative principles, and to bring about positive reform to our state. We're committed to fighting the reckless embrace of socialism. The others. And believe in true conservatism. They never say what that is. And like a lot of these, it's a lot of jingoism, it's a lot of flag waving, a lot of chest thumping, a lot of that stuff. A lot of the use of the word common sense, which there doesn't seem to be any real sense in here. They're against healthcare. They're against saving our environment. That seems to be fairly consistent in what they're saying. But their executive director, a guy named Spencer Bone, he said the Liberty Alliance is dedicated to providing unwavering support for the principles that our country was founded on, regardless of who's in power. And you go, what exactly was that? Oh, but, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness? Is that what you're talking about? No. It's about attacking the others. It's not about life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. It's not about individual rights. It's not about living your best life. It's about ensuring that blacks are, 3/5 a person back in the field. Women are back in the kitchen, and gays are back in the closet. The others. It's about doing away with them. That's a problem. And they've got the map to point to the other knuckle draggers to be able to, again, organize their hate in a very concerted way, in a dangerous way, I argue. Because like I said, the one thing that I was surprised by is there wasn't a crosshair there. Kind of like they did the one year with Sarah Palin's site. But I guess they learned that lesson because that was a bit too far for most people. Because there was no plausible deniability. But that's really what they want here. So when you have over 300 shooting incidents in a 72-hour period, 14 mass shootings, and they're still sticking to, it's not the gun, you got to question how troubled is our well-regulated militia? And maybe it's time for some well-regulated regulations. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. So Sam Alito, Supreme Court Justice, has temporarily blocked a lower court decision that would allow the counting of undated ballots in Pennsylvania. Now, the background on this, pretty simple. There was a judicial race in 2021. There were a number of ballots that were received without a date on the external envelope, but they were received on time, set aside. They went through a whole process. The Third District Court of Appeals, the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, Third District Circuit Court, they ruled that, yeah, we're going to count those. Alito has now stepped in at the Supreme Court level and said, "Yeah, we're going to put a stop to that." Why? Because this is going to have an impact not just on that judicial race, but on the Pennsylvania Senate race, which has Dr. Oz, up by less than 1,000 votes. And David McCormick has filed a lawsuit saying, hey, got this ruling. There are a number of ballots here in Pennsylvania that are undated because the machine didn't date them, and they should be counted. And since this court said it should be counted, they should be. Alito has said no, and it's going to be interesting to watch this play out because on both sides of the Republican party, there's a fight going on. Now, of course, you've got the Trumpkins, the extreme Trumpkins, like the Kathy Barnett people who are saying, "Oh, we're being robbed. It's a rigged election," as you would expect, crybabies. But you have a system that is really troubled because there are things that need to be addressed that Republicans will not address because to their core, they don't want mail-in ballots. They don't want people voting. They want to limit the number of people voting. It's kind of frightening on a certain level. And interesting. And going to be interesting to see where Alito comes out in this, because at the end of it, what does Sam do? Now you go, why Samuel Alito? Well, he's the person who is responsible for emergency requests from the 3rd District. It was just where it was going to go. He didn't jump into the middle of it. There's nothing nefarious here. It's how the system works. But kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Kind of makes you wonder how this goes. But we're talking less than 1,000 votes. This could swing the balance of this election. And then there can be more fights and more claims of illegitimacy, and let the fun begin. Let's quick take a call before we take break. Alice on line 1. How are you today, Alice?
I'm good, and how are you?
I'm doing. What's on your mind?
I just want to say, the Republican Party, I'm just sitting back watching them because they're scrapping and clawing and trying to cut each other's throat, and I'm just sitting back going, yeah, okay. Somebody decide who's what, because y'all just are real interesting. I mean, it's insane. And, and then you have Abbott down there in Texas trying to claim, he didn't know anything, and poor little him, and nobody can still get the straight answer on what happened, really. So I think everybody's thoroughly confused.
That's the point, though. That's what they want. I think they knew exactly what was going on. I think they went and they blamed that teacher for propping the door open, knowing that the door wasn't propped open. I think they were trying to put blame everywhere than where it was supposed to be.
I agree with you. And then, of course, the part that gets me is instead of saying, my God, these kids and the teachers were the victims, you got Abbott going, I'm being victimized. I was lied to. It's like, oh, as usual, you got to be the victims. But you have a good evening.
Thank you, Alice. I appreciate it. No, and that's the infuriating part of this. It's all about the distraction. It's all about, got to keep it away from the real issue. And the real issue is, how did this kid get this gun so easily? Why do we have such lax regulations or none? And I had this conversation over the weekend, and someone said, well, you want everyone registering their guns? I'm like, yeah. They do it in other countries, and people still have. I don't want people losing their gun rights, but you know what? This idea that I can have as many guns as I want, unbeknownst to anyone, seems silly. And the whole analogy with the cars, we register our cars. Nobody's coming for the cars. And look, I would be one of the first ones in line to say if they were actually coming to grab the guns, no. But I think having sane regulations in place that people register them so we know who's responsible for them. There is some training component when you get it, where you actually know how to use it, that you're actually accountable for that weapon, and that when you hand it off to someone else, there's a transfer, there's a trail, that it just isn't, you can't just sell it to someone in a parking lot. There's a problem with the way we do this stuff. And you go, well, there's so many guns underground. Yeah, because we've got a broken system. We've got an insane system. And I know there's people go, no, we can't. That's a slippery slope. No, it's not. It's a sane slope. And it's how and I know. We're not going to stop all the shootings. And we're not. We're never going to stop all of them. There are some shootings everywhere. Even Switzerland, I think, had one or two. But doing nothing is just insane. And it's our fault. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Also, make sure you grab the podcast. Always available, always there at thericksmithshow.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1921. That was the day one of the worst race riots in American history began in Tulsa, Oklahoma. In a frenzy of anti-black violence, a white mob destroyed virtually the entire black neighborhood of Greenwood. Over the course of the next 2 days, as many as 300 mostly black residents were killed. Black Wall Street had been burned to the ground, leaving 10,000 homeless. The day before, Dick Rowland, a young black man, tripped as he boarded an elevator at his job. He fell against the young white woman elevator operator. When she shrieked, nearby department store employees assumed she had been assaulted. Rowland was arrested, and newspapers fanned the flames of race violence and vigilantism. And on this day, white racist mobs surrounded the Tulsa County Courthouse where Rowland was being held and demanded he be turned over to them. Returning black veterans had become increasingly assertive about their rights as citizens. They marched to the courthouse armed in an attempt to prevent Rowland's lynching. When the vets refused to disarm in the face of the demands by the white mob, gunfire ensued, touching off 16 hours of fighting that literally decimated the community black workers and professionals had built up over the course of decades. The National Guard was called out, mainly to disarm and round up black residents of Greenwood. Witnesses reported that Greenwood was bombed from the air by police and by Sinclair Oil Company planes. The history of the riot was buried for more than half a century. It would take until 1997 for the Oklahoma State Legislature to set up a commission to uncover the bloody details, which produced a 200-plus page report and recommended millions in reparations. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Republican politicos are all over Joe Biden for failing to stop inflation. Perhaps you wonder, though, what these squawkers would do if they were in charge. No need to wonder. Just look back to 1974, when Americans were being pummeled by price spikes that topped 12%, nearly double what we're enduring today. But by gollies, President Gerald Ford and his Republican contingent in Congress met the challenge head-on with a new magical program of economic uplift they called WIN, Whip Inflation Now. But it was nothing, just a political slogan with no magic and no action behind it. Price controls, antitrust action? No. GOP Inc. didn't want to offend, much less punish, corporate titans for a little profiteering. So they shifted the blame for inflation to consumers, demanding that families just say no to price gouging. Ford himself went on national TV, urging fellow citizens to join him in buying, quote, only those products and services priced at or below present levels. The core of the Republican program, then, was telling hard-hit wage earners to battle the monopolistic behemoths of big oil, big pharma, big food et al. On their own, by simply refusing to pay inflated prices for the gasoline, medicines, groceries, and such that, hello, they had to have. As a reward, everyone who signed a form promising to be an inflation fighter was sent a nifty win button, indicating their patriotic participation. Sure enough, Americans responded enthusiastically, with an avalanche of ridicule. Even Ford's top economic advisor was whopper-jawed by the GOP's idea that the substance of their policy was a political button. It was surreal. I said to myself, this is unbelievable stupidity.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So over the Memorial Day weekend, the much anticipated, much promoted Top Gun 2 Maverick, the 80s movie was brought back, and from what I'm told, great movie. I tried to get my young daughter to go with me. She wasn't having it, but I'm going to see it. I am. But the stories that I saw coming out of it, a lot of it surrounding the jacket. Evidently, there were some statements made in Tom Cruise's jacket, the flag of Taiwan on the back, which pretty bold statement from Tom Cruise, considering you got other actors who are like, no, I'll learn Mandarin Chinese to apologize for saying that Taiwan exists. This, I got to tell you, pretty big stones on this little guy. I give him credit. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the movie, because I know he saw it And to give us some thoughts on, well, is this as big a deal as I think it is? I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. Scott's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. AmericanManufacturing.org is their website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick. Always happy to have time and to talk about film as part of a public policy too. That's always a plus up, huh?
Yeah. So let's start with this. Let's go with that. It was a good movie.
Yeah, well, look, I am no Siskel and Ebert, but it's a great movie. I think sequels are hard to do, but in this case, in my humble opinion, the sequel's better than the original in so many ways. I mean, it's got all the rah-rah of Top Gun. It's a little less Reagan-esque, I think, than the 80s version of it. Yeah, it's a crowd pleaser. It's a really, really good movie. As you pointed out, like many films, it hasn't steered clear from international controversy. I guess primarily because of the role that the Chinese Communist Party censors play today in so much Western entertainment and social media that's trying to get into China.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that he wore the jacket, or that it got into the movie, because that's one of those things where is it worth making that kind of a statement in that moment, given the fact that all the other actors are kind of shying away from it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so this is Paramount, so it's not a small studio, right? And big name star, probably the biggest name star in the United States, Jerry Bruckheimer. Probably one of the most successful, if not the most successful director of popular movies. And so there was a lot at stake. And, way back, and I'm sure you saw the original, Rick, I was a teenager when I saw it. And he wears that famous kind of flight jacket, and it has it has a couple of flags on the back as part of the emblems. One is of Taiwan, one's of Japan. And so, interestingly, this movie was going to come out a couple of years ago, but the pandemic pushed it back. But there was a trailer for this movie in 2019, and very astute observers noticed that when you could see Tom Cruise in the flight jacket, that they had changed the flag of Japan and the flag of Taiwan, and they had converted it into something completely different to try to appease the Chinese censors, right? And they also had a big Chinese investor in this movie at the time, Tencent, which is, the equivalent of a Fortune 500 company, a very huge company in China. But as it turns out, Tencent pulled out of the movie, and Paramount and Tom Cruise and Jerry Bruckheimer basically said, you know what? We're going to put the Taiwan and the Japanese flags back in to the flight jacket. And if the movie never shows in China, which it never may, actually, other than being pirated, so be it. They'll count on the rest of the world to make the revenue for them. And in the process, they won't try to make these ridiculous sacrifices and appeasement that so many Western entertainers or entertainment companies are totally willing to make to ensure some access to the Chinese market.
Yeah, because it is all about the money. Now, to be honest, I'm partial to the first one. Getting back to my childhood, I'm a little bit, like you, I was a teenager at the time, big Meg Ryan fan. So no Meg Ryan in this movie that I know of. Partial to the old one.
Yeah, no Meg Ryan, but there's a couple of I tell you what, you'll just have to see it and let it rest on its own merits. But it's got it's a great popcorn movie. It's not going to cause you to stretch your brain too much to think about it, but it's got a lot of great action, a lot of great one-liners, great film score, all of that stuff going for it.
So it's a Tom Cruise movie. Is he running?
Yeah. Is he running?
Yeah, because in every movie he's running. I mean, that's his thing. He's running from or to something. He's always running.
Yeah, he does a lot of running, Rick. Yeah, and he does a lot of sitting in the cockpit, and and apparently, even though he's I think almost 60 years old, or maybe 60 years old, he still apparently does his own stunts. And so I know that this isn't about Tom Cruise, but it's a movie worth seeing. And I felt good about seeing it because they did not try to appease the censors in China. They made a decision when they released the film that they're going to release it as is, with those emblems on the back, including the flag of Taiwan, which, in the words of one Vice magazine reporter, is a big middle finger to the regime in Beijing. And so it's kind of nice to see, again, probably the most bankable movie star in the Western Hemisphere be able to do that.
Yeah, now I have to see it. Now you've just given me the reason that I now have to see it. And it's when I was like, I'll get around to it. Maybe. Now I got to go. I got to get your thoughts on this. I'm not a huge Elon Musk fan. I know some people are, especially lately. I'm not a huge fan. But the Chinese, there's a report coming out that the Chinese military researchers are talking about destroying his satellite, this Starlink satellite, because of they believe that it's a huge problem for them because they believe it's a weapon. I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, it's interesting because, and first of all, Elon Musk is a very complicated person, and I have, really strong feelings about some stuff that he does. And then on the other hand, he does stuff that you're like, oh, I can't believe he's doing that. This is actually not that bad. But Starlink is a good example of, the danger here is that it's a private network. Okay, let's just say that. But we see what the benefits of it are, which is it can restore, internet service to a country like Ukraine, where it was taken out by the Russian military, right? So it's obviously got advantages like that. And I think one of the things that Beijing is worried about is the workaround access that it would give to Chinese citizens to get an unfiltered view of the world and of the regime. And I don't think that Beijing, that the Chinese Communist Party, that Xi Jinping want any alternate authority in any type of information or any capability of disseminating information other than possess. I mean, obviously, there are VPN networks in China that Westerners can have access to. Is very difficult for Chinese citizens themselves. And so something like Starlink, setting aside the questions of a private company, having controlling a massive networks of satellites around the globe, which we could talk about in another episode. But it is interesting that that the regime in Beijing has noticed this. And thinks that it could be a threat.
It's a threat to their power and control and their censorship. Absolutely.
That's right.
And that's where I was going with this, because at some point some alternative messaging has to get in there, and and the hope is because the way I'm looking at it is China views themselves as the future of the globe, not just of China, their own destiny, but of the entire globe. And I understand recently Anthony Blinken gave a speech at George Washington University on U.S. policy towards China, and there was some pretty interesting language that he used. Obviously he claims he doesn't want to start another Cold War, but a lot of the language that he was talking about is kind of leading that we're possibly looking at another Cold War.
Yeah. I mean, Rick, it's interesting, and this is a huge dilemma. And I think Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State. People have been waiting for this for a while. What's the administration's China policy going to be? How is it going to differ from the Obama administration? How is it going to differ from the Trump administration? And I think many people thought the China policy that came out of the Trump administration was erratic. It was tougher in a lot of ways than we had been in the past, but it was also very erratic. And then at the end of the day, Rick, as you know, he was willing to make a trade deal, which was half-baked, just so he could claim victory. Even though it was a terrible, terrible deal. And so I think something that Secretary Blinken said is really interesting and really important. And notwithstanding the fact that you have this Russian aggression against Ukraine, and I think the point he's making about the Chinese Communist Party is very valid here. It is the only regime that has the resources, first of all, both economic and military. China has the largest navy in the world. It's got the second largest economy. It will pass the U.S. economy on a GDP basis probably within the next 8 or 9 years or so. And it also wants to remake the world order in its image. And I think that was the other thing. That's the thing that's concerning. So it has both the capabilities and the interest in changing the world order to make it look like what it wants. And let's be clear about what that is, right? It is an authoritarian government, fundamentally, where they could, there is no dissent, where they're even within their own country, they're trying to make it as Han Chinese as possible, rooting out Tibetan culture and Uyghur culture and religion and everything else like that. So we have to be very clear about that. And any sort of hints towards democracy, like what they've done in Hong Kong most recently. And so I think this is really critical. And you bring up the right point. Is this going to be a Cold War or not? In a way, we've been in a Cold War, except for we've been funding China, which is the difference, right? I mean, we didn't fund the Soviet Union in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. In fact, we helped to fund our allies around the world, some of which were horrible regimes, some of which were democratic, to try to take on that. But in this case, we're actively, through our trade policy, financing what they want to do. And how much sense does that make? And so I think that when you frame the question that way, you have to say, shouldn't we have an economic policy that allows us to be less dependent on critical goods coming from China? Everything from PPE that we have depended on during the pandemic to a lot of the critical minerals that are going to go into our clean energy economy. We need to find other sources right here in America and among our friends, because so much of our economy, unfortunately, way too much, is really dependent on imports from China right now.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Scott Paul. Scott's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Make sure you check out the work that he does over at AmericanManufacturing.org. Fantastic stuff. But you said three things. You said no dissent. You said they have a nationalistic, China first kind of, ideology and authoritarian, government mindset. I'm looking around here. There's a political party here at home that, no dissent, nationalistic, authoritarian, that seems would kind of be okay with that, being in line with that kind of a mentality, which is why I don't know that I'm seeing the kind of pushback that I would like to see, given the what we've been talking about for over a decade now with the direction that we're going. None of this is new, Scott. We've been talking about this, that this is where we were going to end up, and yet here we are, and I'm still not comfortable where we are with the kind of response that we're getting from our elected leaders. So the question I guess I have is, are our elected leaders lining up to go, yeah, we've got to do this and we got to do it now? Or is this, no, we need them, profits and all of that?
Yeah, you're right. There is this deep division. It's probably more stark among Republicans than it is among Democrats right now. But it is real. And on the one hand, and I think this is the interesting thing that you're bringing up, you have a Republican Party where the last president was actually, notwithstanding the tariffs that he put on Chinese products, was much more friendly towards authoritarian governments, right? I mean, with Putin, and others that I think makes a number of other traditional Republicans a little more uncomfortable. At the same time, you have that element among the Republican parties, and unfortunately some Democrats that listen to the big corporations that say, we're making so much money in China, and we're so dependent on it, and your constituents are getting these really cheap. Mess that up right now, particularly when we're in an era of inflation. Again, setting aside the fact that what people are paying more for is fuel, is housing prices, airline tickets, stuff that has nothing to do with trade with China at all. Nothing to do with that, and everything to do with a lot of other factors going on around the globe. And so there will be a reckoning for all of this. Do we keep the tariffs? Do we not keep the tariffs? That's a question that we're going to be asking and answering in the coming months, because there's going to be an investigation about this, and we'll see whose side people are on. And I will say, so far, the Biden administration has been on the right side of this. They've kept the tariffs in place for the most part. And as Secretary Blinken outlined, they want a smart, strategic, tough policy with respect to China, and to find ways to get some of that stuff that we need so desperately out of China. But you think about this, Rick, just for a second, like Apple. Here's a company that has invested hundreds of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars in China to build up a supplier network. They will not go willingly. They will not go willingly and want to leave. And so, you're going to have Apple, Tim Cook, and Xi Jinping basically on the same side here on an issue. And so it's going to be a tough one. Yeah. But the right thing to do for American workers and for our for human rights is going to be seeing some of that delinkage and building up other supply chains that respond to some of our other policy goals, like climate, as well as our ethical and moral concerns as Americans.
Yeah, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and it's going to come down to us as working people to hold the line and to push, because you're right, the CEOs, they're not going to give up their profits and their cheap exploitable labor. They're not going to give that up easily. You're so right. Scott, I appreciate the time as always. Great stuff.
You bet. Thanks so much for having me on, Rick. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Our good friend Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. Make sure you check out the work that they do. We'll get links out on social media. Quick break, right back. Remember, if you miss any of the program, grab the podcast. Always there, always available, wherever you get yours, or just go to thericksmithshow.com and grab it from there. Quick break, back after this. Rick Smith here, host of The Rick Smith Show. Father's Day is just around the corner. And if your dad is as hard to find a gift for as my wife and kids claim that I am, here's a little gift-giving wisdom from our friends at Omaha Steaks. Dads want steaks. It's true. We do. Every holiday in my house, it's the same thing. Dad, what do you want for this holiday? And, I always give the same thing. Give me a hug and spend a little time with me. I don't need ties or cologne or any of that stuff. And now, thanks to Omaha Steaks, they ask, Dad, what do you want? Steaks. Give me the Dads Want Steaks package. Just go to omahasteaks.com, type Rick Smith in the search bar, and order the Dads Want Steaks package. And for just $99, this limited time package includes 16 mouth-watering entrees that I love, and I guarantee he'll love too. The smoky, tender, bacon-wrapped filet mignons, the gourmet jumbo franks, their air-chilled, boneless chicken breast, and of course my favorite, the thick, delicious, boneless pork chops. And to finish it off, the sweet finish of it all, the delicious caramel apple tartlets. And as a special gift for my listeners, when you type Rick Smith in the search bar and order the Dads Want Steaks package, you'll also get 8 free Omaha Steaks burgers. These are awesome. You throw them on the grill, cook them to perfection. These burgers are full of bold, beefy flavor, made from 100% Omaha steaks, and now they're bigger than ever, a whopping 6 ounces. So this Father's Day, don't wait. Send Dad more than just a gift. Send him an experience he'll love and can share with you. In fact, don't just order one. Get 2 Dads Want Steaks packages. One for him and one he can share with you. Just go to omahasteaks.com and type Rick Smith in the search bar and get the Dads Want Steaks package. You won't regret it. I guarantee it.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So I spent an arm and a leg filling up my truck today. I was hoping they would take blood, but they don't. They don't take blood. And the price of fuel going to continue to go up. In fact, the price of gas, they say, has now hit an all-time new record. The average retail price now $469.19. That is up from the $417.8 a month ago, 52% higher than a year ago, they're saying. Now, Europe has agreed to phase out Russian oil. They're going to wean themselves off of that, which, get ready for it, which means, yes, gas prices going to go higher, which means that we could be paying the same gas prices the rest of the world. Because, look, we've been spoiled for a very long time. Our gas prices are really low compared to the rest of the world. When you look at the UK, you look at Hong Kong, you look at the rest of the world, they're up in the $10 a gallon range anyway. But that didn't stop Jim Jordan today from tweeting out, Americans are seeing $8 gas in some parts of the country. I haven't seen that. Haven't seen $8. But he says it's only getting worse. And Joe Biden still refuses domestic production. Unbelievable. May I remind him that he voted against the oil and gas price gouging bill. In fact, all Republicans voted against the oil and gas price gouging bill. All of them. And to Jim Jordan and everybody who seems to think that Joe Biden can just flip a switch and increase production, let me know when we nationalize the oil companies, and then we can say that. When you say that Joe Biden needs to increase production, you just sound dumb. Because Biden has no control over what private corporations do. But what we do know is the private corporations like Shell made $19.3 billion in pure profit off of you last year. BP made $13 billion pure profit off of you last year. ExxonMobil made $23 billion pure profit off of you last year. Chevron made $15.6 billion pure profit off of you last year. Profits wonderful because gas prices are high. Why? Because they want them high. Because you know who can increase production? Shell, BP, Exxon, Chevron. You're getting the picture, not Joe Biden. Joe Biden's got as much chance to increase production as I have of getting a kitchen spoon and digging in my backyard. Not going to happen. Now, Jim Jordan knows this. Jim Jordan knows that Biden has no control over this. Jim Jordan knows that there are thousands of oil leases out there. There are leases out there that these companies have been sitting on for years. He knows this. He doesn't care. He doesn't care that he's going to lie to us. He knows this is a game. He knows this is about making you angry. And he's giving you someone to be angry at. This is about feeding the outrage. He understands that you need someone to be angry at, and election time's coming. They want to win elections. So who do they going to be angry at? Going to be angry at the opponents. That's what this is about. It has nothing about bringing the production down. Because again, where's the legislation? Show me the policy. Because these are policymakers. If I wanted outrage candy, I would listen to right-wing talk radio. If I wanted misinformation, I would listen to the F channel on TV. If I want policy, if I want something to actually get done, supposedly Jim Jordan is who I'm supposed to go to. But increasingly what we're finding out is most of these people, they're just trying to get jobs over at the F channel. Look at Trey Gowdy. Look at a lot of them. Congress seems to be like an audition for their next gig. Because Paul Ryan is right. You used to have to actually be something, do something, know something to get in Congress. Now you just have to, look like someone cares about you on social media. We're in very interesting times, folks. And again, it comes back down to you and me. It comes back to us holding these people accountable. And when people say dumb stuff like, Joe Biden should increase production, slap them down with some sanity. Just my thought. Love to hear yours. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Also, remember, grab the podcast there at thericksmithshow.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hurricane season, we got to remember, is 6 months. It's half of the year. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Buckle up and batten down. NOAA forecasts another active, long hurricane season. Exxon loses its bid to escape climate liability. Major global companies join forces to buy green at Davos. Plus,
if the Pebble project moves forward, it's going to enable other projects to move forward as well.
Good news. Biden EPA to block controversial Pebble mine in Alaska.
I thought that was blocked long ago. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
This is a crisis we have. We're running out of water. Water parks are asking kids to pee in the pool.
It's true. It's that bad. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, it's not even summer yet, but hurricane season it's already here.
Yep, it starts June 1, and NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has forecast another busy Atlantic hurricane season for the 7th straight year in a row. The average number of storms is 14, but NOAA predicts this year will bring 14 to 21 named storms, plus 3 to 6 major hurricanes that reach Category 3 or higher. Now, it's important to remember that the U.S. may see no actual landfalls or a few or many, but the past 2 hurricane seasons both exhausted the list of 21 storm names. That was unprecedented, and the 2020 season was the most active on record.
Well, you know, I could predict that we will see no storms, some storms, or a whole lot of storms.
True, but climate studies do show that warming of the oceans and atmosphere is intensifying hurricanes, rainfall, and flooding, and storm impacts now reach further inland. So it's a good idea to go ahead and be prepared anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Extreme flooding is already hammering Bangladesh and India, where torrential pre-monsoon rains triggered devastating floods that have killed more than 60, displaced millions, and swept away entire towns and villages, infrastructure, and communications, leaving large areas without access to food or clean drinking water. California this week issued new emergency water conservation regulations amid an historic mega drought after calls to voluntarily cut water use had little effect. Starting in mid-June, commercial, industrial, and institutional properties will be banned from watering their lawns. That is, non-functional ornamental turf, not including areas actually used for recreation or community purposes.
Well, to be fair, the last time we had this major drought warnings, a lot of us did cut back on our water. There might not be a lot more to cut back at this point.
But some good news at the annual World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland this week. A group of more than 50 major global corporations, including Microsoft, Google, Volvo, and Ford Motor Company, joined forces for a new Buy Green initiative. The idea is to purchase only green steel, aluminum, cement, and chemicals by 2030. The advanced purchase pledge is a pretty big deal. Experts say it will stoke global demand and help emerging low-carbon technologies scale up.
Well, it's stoking some good publicity for those corporations in any event.
True. In Scandinavia this week, the Finnish parliament passed ambitious new climate legislation. The new policy moves up Finland's target to be carbon neutral to 2035 and to be carbon negative by 2040, and the policy is legally binding.
Wow, that's impressive. I wish we had a real government who could do stuff like that.
Massachusetts State Supreme Court this week rejected a last-ditch effort by ExxonMobil to dismiss a climate liability lawsuit brought by State Attorney General Maura Healey.
Are they still fighting that thing?
They are. The suit accuses the oil giant of lying to investors and the public about the fact that they knew since the 1970s that burning their product would cause dangerous man-made climate change. The ruling means that Exxon will now have to stand trial for fraud in Massachusetts.
Sad.
And finally, the Biden Environmental Protection Agency has proposed new permanent protections for Bristol Bay in Alaska, one of the world's most prolific salmon fisheries. The EPA has proposed to ban the disposal of toxic mining waste in the Bristol Bay watershed, a decision that likely means the end, for real this time, of the wildly controversial, massive proposed gold and copper mine known as Pebble Mine, and effectively ends a fight that has raged raged for more than a decade.
I thought it was ended months ago, no?
Every decision up to now has chipped away at the Pebble Mine. This, if it is approved, will be the final death knell.
And it'll be permanent until Donald Trump takes office again, right?
One hopes not.
For much more on all of these terrifying stories and more that we couldn't get to, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So we hear often how we love our veterans, how we love the military. We hear that a lot, but actions to me speak much louder than the words. And some of the things that I'm seeing, I'm not so thrilled about. I'm hearing a lot of VA closures. I'm hearing some things I'm not happy with, especially considering that coming out of 20 years of conflict, 20 years of war. We've got a lot of people who need help. A lot of people who have a lot of things that need to be addressed. And you're talking about closing things, consolidating, I got questions. Maybe this is a good thing and I just don't know it. That's why I turned to my friend Phil Glover. He is National Vice President of District 3 for the American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE. They are the folks who represent the workers at the VA. Phil, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate you having me on.
So I'm looking at this, and am I hearing this right? That we're talking about there's some closures going on, some realignments. Is this good, bad? Explain to me what's going on.
Yeah. So what happened is in 2018 there was a wonderful sounding bill passed called the Mission Act that dealt with VAs, and it fell down along the lines of, like, I don't know if you remember the Department of Defense with their BRAC program where they closed a bunch of DoD bases. Well, this thing's kind of based off of that program, and we kind of thought the data from this Mission Act, they over a couple of years they put this thing together, and it came out in what's called the Ayers Commission, which that came out in mid-March, and it was a report to each of the VA VISNs. They're built in regions. So like in PA and Delaware, we have VISN 4. So we got that report in mid-March, and unfortunately, the Secretary McDonough, went ahead and issued the report. Some of us thought he should have sent it back for better data because the data was all pre-COVID. And the VAs did a lot of things during COVID. So in District 3, for instance, what it does is it would push the closure of Coatesville out near Philly. It would look at closing the Philadelphia VA in the city and moving it to Camden, New Jersey, and building a new facility over there, building a small facility in King of Prussia, and then it would do some various things to our other VAs. Altoona would lose its operating room, some of its emergency care, that would go over to the private sector. Wilkes-Barre would lose its inpatient care, its nursing facility, and its emergency or its operating room, which would be all pushed to the private sector. And there's some other changes as well, but those are the big ones for us in the district.
So the privatization part of it jumps right out. Let's start with that first. I'm viscerally, when I hear privatization, immediately I'm turned off, because I know all privatization schemes that I've seen, how they're usually sold are, we're going to get better outcomes, it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be better for people, and yet none of that ever seems to come to fruition. It usually ends up being worse services, more expensive, and more bureaucracy. Are you fearful of the same kind of things happening here?
Yeah, because, we just watched this with the choice program that they thought was going to be this great savior of the VA. And what they did with Choice is they put some money in it, and then they sent our veterans out to private care. When the money ran out, they sent our veterans back to public care. The problem is the veterans ended up back in the back of the line. And so they ended up waiting longer for services than they did originally had they just been in the VA line. So in this case, you have facilities like up in Wilkes-Barre, you know, they don't have a whole bunch of hospitals up. I'm up here actually tomorrow. I'm going over to the VA tomorrow. They don't have a bunch of private sector hospitals up here to take this care over. Altoona only has UPMC Medical across the hill. They, during COVID, ended up sending patients toward the VA. And that's, you know, we handled some of the treatment and emergency care for people that had COVID, which is what I was saying. Had the VA secretary sent this back to look at post-COVID use of the VA, I think the data would have been different. Yeah, and we had hoped that he would do that.
Here's my other problem with the privatization part, especially when you're talking about the VA, since the VA is very specific in its clientele. People who have served in the military, who have very specific kind of ailments that are, you know, mostly that are, you know, specific to veterans and people who have served in military operations and abroad especially. The private sector isn't set up to deal with those kind of ailments, those kind of and identifying them. So isn't it possible we're going to end up costing people more? And I don't want to be hyperbolic in saying this, but isn't this going to end up possibly costing people their lives and being able to diagnose things that, if your specialty is knowing what ails veterans, and this is something that's I'm not going to say normal, but something that happens in this segment of the population often, whereas if you're not dealing with it as often, you might not catch it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is the VAs are set up to certainly share their experiences. So if you have a number of patients, let's say with the burn pits, you know, some private sector doctor down at eye care, if he's the one seeing this veteran, he doesn't have any real knowledge of what the burn pits over in Iraq did to these veterans' lungs or other parts of their bodies. Same with Agent Orange exposure, as you probably are well aware from different interviews and things. You know, Agent Orange was a huge problem to where now the VA acknowledges that Parkinson's and other neurological conditions they don't even argue about it anymore. They get care for those things because of Agent Orange exposure in Vietnam. So these are all things the VA is tied together along with the psychological issues with PTSD, you know, the stress factors and those things of veterans. So, yeah, we have a real concern about, you know, how that treatment's going to go in the private sector. Will they have to do more tests to figure out what's going on? Will they understand what they're seeing? They're not trained for that as much. Obviously, the VA doctors are. So, yeah, we have a real problem with how this whole thing is. We know that the VA is still 50,000 employees short coming out of the last administration. And we think the funds and those things should be put into getting, you know, people up to speed, getting, you know, doctors, nurses, psychologists, everybody on the ground that these veterans need. Yeah. That's where the money needs to go.
No, and this is where I was going to go eventually as well, because like you said, you know, it used to be 49, we're up to 50,000 people short. This just seems like a quicker fix than to deal with the real problem, which is you've got major staffing concerns. We've got major shortfalls in dealing with the people that we put up on pedestals and called heroes. And it seems to me that we're going to throw them to an already burdened private healthcare system. And I'm concerned they're not going to get the care that they need.
Well, and as you know, coming out of COVID, healthcare is a huge burden trying to get people to stay in healthcare. Hiring at the private sector is as difficult probably as it is in the federal sector with the VAs and other you know, DHA, which is our defense health agencies. Those are all stressing the system as far as getting doctors and nurses and others on board. And so this doesn't really provide much help at all. In fact, we think it damages veterans' health care.
Yeah, it's something we have to do. So what do we do, Phil? I mean, I listened to, I'm going through all this and I'm going, okay, how do I help ensure that, because look, when this started, going back to when, George Bush said we're going into Afghanistan, the first thing that I said is, if we're going to commit to this, if we're going to start a war and we're going to commit troops to putting boots on the ground, I don't want to see what happened to the guys coming back from Vietnam. I remember growing up during that era, the housing project I grew up in, they just dumped those men back into our community, just left them with horrible drug and alcohol problems, with broken minds, broken bodies. They were just dumped. And I said, if we're going to do this, we can't allow this to happen. We've got to do everything we can, put every resource into making sure that they're taken care of. How do we make sure we live up to that?
Well, what we're doing right now, many of our districts, me included, are working to get members of Congress to, number one, say that they will not vote for these closures and those things. Fortunately, in Coatesville, they have Chrissy Houlihan. She stepped out right away and said she does not want that facility to close. She thinks it should be updated. It is a big drug treatment, and it uses a lot of mental health things happen at Coatesville. She doesn't want to see that closed. We've had Brendan Boyle and Dwight Evans who voted against this act in the first place, and certainly our locals in various parts of the state have been working with their members of Congress to get them to understand that this is not a good plan. The other issue for us is this Ayers Commission has to be confirmed by the Senate. So you have Senator Casey can stop this pretty quickly by saying that he won't vote to move forward a chair of the commission. And I think it's 180 days later, the commission would then expire, which would be a good way to get rid of this whole thing. So we're working various ways to do that. Right now, we're doing petition drives to get members of Congress on the radar. And on AFG's pages, we've done this before, and you know this, at afge.org/SaveMyVA. We have information and petitions there to sign for the public. And we're also working on, we're geofencing hospitals, VA hospitals, to let the public fill out petitions and send them in as well.
Well, something we most certainly need to do, and demand representation and demand that we take care of the people who we put up on pedestals and said we're heroes, and to actually treat them as such and help them and their families. This is unacceptable. On the other side of this, then, if you stop this, what needs to be done to fulfill the mission? And is there any movement that would help us make, you're 50,000 people short. Is there anything that's being done? Granted, we're going to stop this, but is there anything being done that's going to address the real problems that are there?
We need, one of the things that I know AFG's been working on and others is more flexible pay for nurses and doctors and psychologists to get them on board. The VA clearly falls under the federal pay system, which can be a little rigid. So we do need help. With getting a better pay system in place so that you can be flexible with these physicians, increase their pay up to what the private sector may be offering. That helps. The other thing is just pure, getting the ground employees. I mean, they still need secretaries. They still need schedulers. They need phone reps because, like in our VBAs, veterans call into the phones for help. They're only allowed by performance standards. They're only supposed to be on the phone with a veteran for 8 minutes. Now, if I'm a veteran calling in, which I am a veteran, calling in to the VBA and I need some help, and I'm pushed off the phone in 8 minutes because this guy has to meet a imposed performance standard, those things need to be fixed.
Why
and when
8
you
minutes? Let me stop there.
That's their number is to be able to service enough veterans with our current staffing. You have 8 minutes to get a veteran on and off the phone and get them whatever service they want. And to me, it's crazy. Our veterans deserve, I don't care if it's an hour, they deserve whatever time is needed to get them the help they need on those call center phones. And those standards are ridiculous in VBA. That's our Veterans Benefit Administration. And this all ties in. It all ties in with veterans care. And we have to be realistic, and we got to push members of Congress and the administration to do the right things. And I think sometimes we get a friendly administration in, and then we go, well, they're friends. Well, sometimes they still don't make the right decisions. And we have to be there to kind of kick them in the rear once in a while and say, hey, guys, you got to wake up. We're trying to get some things fixed here. Listen to the union. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, well, you got to dance with the person that brought you as well. So this is one of those things. I hope folks will check out the website, afge.org/SaveMyVA. Sign the petitions, get the information. We'll get links out on social media, how you can take a look at that. But, Phil, I appreciate the time. As this continues, I hope you'll come back and share some more with us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rick. You have a good night.
You as well, our good friend Phil Glover. Make sure you check out their website. We'll get links out on social media, how you can do that. It's amazing to me. And like I said from the beginning, the reality is these privatization schemes never pan out the way they sell them. The way the Madison Avenue PR firms sell it to us never seems to work out that way. Always seems to cost us more. We get less services and, well, worse outcomes. Love to hear your thoughts, though. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Also, grab the podcast. Make sure you grab it and never miss a moment. Quick break. Right back. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
It is really, it's amazing when you stop and think about it. 50,000 employees short. And it's been that way for, it's got to be 5 or 6 years now that they have not, throughout the Trump years. We were talking about this, and look, even at the end of the Obama years, there were people that hadn't been replaced yet, and a lot of it had to do with the sequester back during the Obama years, where they were freezing pay at the VA, and because understand, it's about starving the beast. It's about dragging it, making the government so small you can drag it into the bathtub and drown it in the bathtub. You've heard that. That's what this is. It's what it's been, and we are in the mission accomplished stage. So now it's, hey, let's come up with some bad ideas to ensure that they get worse. And all of these privatization schemes, all of this deference towards corporate America has gotten us in the moment that we're in. And we've created this billionaire class of people who think that they know everything. And if you look at Elon Musk on Twitter, ask him, he'll tell you he knows it all. And he did a poll here, and this is what's interesting to me and interesting to watch is how the wealth class is really doing a interesting kind of PR campaign on, hey, we work too. It's those lazy people. Blame them. It's those lazy people. Well, Elon Musk put a poll out on Twitter, and who do you trust less, politician or billionaires? Well, since most people don't have any access to billionaires, they don't actually see them. And politicians are beat up on a daily basis. In fact, there's an entire industry funded by billionaires to attack government and politicians. Are you surprised that 3/4 of the population said they don't trust politicians? Of course, no one's surprised by it. And people are like, oh, see, we trust billionaires. No, that's not what that means. It means people are ticked at politicians. And politicians, you should get that message. But as you watch the rest of what Musk's been saying, he's calling for a recession. He's been saying this. In fact, on Twitter said, hey, look, someone asked, you see a recession? He goes, yeah, it's been raining money for too long, he said. It has been raining money on fools for too long. Some bankruptcy needs to happen. Also, all the COVID stay-at-home stuff has tricked people into thinking you don't actually need to work hard. Rude awakening inbound. This frame is really being hammered in lots of places. Because there's still people who think that, there are all these people on unemployment getting the extra $600 a week that was paid out during the shutdown and the pandemic. It's not, but reality doesn't matter. There are people who are going, no, you see, it's those Zoomers who won't take crappy jobs anymore for poverty wages. No. And look, the billionaire class, what they want desperation again. They want this recession. In fact, I would argue the Fed is pushing for it at the behest of our CEO class because they can't find the cheap domestic labor anymore. Not to mention that they've shut off the supply of cheap labor from the southern border, which we can have a whole discussion on immigration at some other point. But there is a recession coming. And whether it's hastened by the Fed raising interest rates or not, it seems like corporate America is pushing for it. And it just seems very interesting that it's right around the time that there's going to be an election. Lots of talk for the run-up, and it'll run right up through the presidential election. It just seems the timing's always very interesting, how these things, how cyclically they seem to just, the pattern seems to run. And we keep falling for it. And we don't push for the policies that are going to make things better. And then we turn to our wealth class. Our wealth class that now views politics as the new sport for them. One that our Supreme Court recently said, yeah, go lend yourself all the money you want, and after you win, the election's over, then you can go back and raise unlimited campaign funds. Yeah, no problem. I mean, when you really stop and think about how badly this game is rigged against average, everyday working people, I'm sometimes at a loss. But we put ourselves in this situation. We put ourselves in this moment. And the question is when will this be it? Will this be the moment where we stand up and say no more falling for this game? I'm not going to listen to Elon Musk or Jamie Dimon or Lloyd, whatever his name is, at Goldman Sachs, or any of the other, titans of industry who have guided our economy into the tank for us and then have massively profited off of our pain and misery. When do we start saying we want policy that's going to help people at the bottom and punish those who cause these problems? I had someone tell me the other day, well, Bezos and Musk and Gates, they lost a whole bunch of money. Yeah, but they're not worrying about, are they going to get extra cheese on their Whopper? They're not worried about if they're going to feed their kids tomorrow. You are. And what policy are we pushing to help address that? Oh, that's right, none. That's a problem. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. When we come back, we're going to talk with our good friend Pete Dominick, Stand Up with Pete host, also one of my favorite comics. Going to give us some thoughts on the day's events. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1987. That was the day that Rose Will Monroe, one of the women who came to be known as Rosie the Riveter, died in Clarksville, Indiana. She was 77 years old. Rose had gone to work in a factory making B-52 bombers in Ypsilanti, Michigan during World War II. She was one of thousands of women in the United States who entered the industrial workforce to support the war effort, while more and more men entered the armed forces. While Rose Will Monroe worked at the factory, the image of Rosie the Riveter was already becoming perhaps one of the most iconic symbols of U.S. labor. The nickname Rosie the Riveter was first used in a song in 1942. The song was inspired by another real-life Rosie. Rosalind P. Walter worked during the war building Corsair fighter planes. Along with the song, a popular poster showed Rosie with a red kerchief tied around her hair, sleeves rolled up, arm muscles flexed, showing the strength of women workers. "We Can Do It" was emblazed across the top of the poster. Then, an actor by the name of Walter Pidgeon visited the Ypsilanti factory. He was helping to make a promotional film to support the war effort at home. When he found out there was a real Rosie who worked as a riveter in the plant, he recruited her for the film. The image of Rosie the Riveter lives on as a symbol of labor and women's empowerment.
All the day long, whether rain or shine, she's a part of the assembly line. She's making history, working for victory. Rosie, the Riveter, keeps a sharp lookout for sabotage. Sitting up there on the fuselage, that little frail can do more than a male can do. Rosie, the Riveter.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Time on the riveting machine when they gave her a production.
Rick Smith here, host of The Rick Smith Show. You know, Father's Day is just around the corner. And if your dad is as hard to find a gift for as my wife and kids claim that I am, here's a little gift-giving wisdom from our friends at Omaha Steaks. Dads want steaks. It's true. We do. Every holiday in my house, it's the same thing. Dad, what do you want for this holiday? And, I always give the same thing. Give me a hug and spend a little time with me. I don't need ties or cologne or any of that stuff. And now, thanks to Omaha Steaks, they ask, Dad, what do you want? Steaks. Give me the Dads Want Steaks package. Just go to omahasteaks.com, type Rick Smith in the search bar, and order the Dads Want Steaks package. And for just $99, this limited time package includes 16 mouth-watering entrees that I love, and I guarantee he'll love too. The smoky, tender, bacon-wrapped filet mignons, the gourmet jumbo franks, their air-chilled, boneless chicken breast, and of course my favorite, the thick, delicious, boneless pork chops. And to finish it off, the sweet finish of it all, the delicious caramel apple tartlets. And as a special gift for my listeners, when you type Rick Smith in the search bar and order the Dads Want Steaks package, you'll also get 8 free Omaha Steaks burgers. These are awesome. You throw them on the grill, cook them to perfection. These burgers are full of bold, beefy flavor, made from 100% Omaha steaks, and now they're bigger than ever, a whopping 6 ounces. So this Father's Day, don't wait. Send Dad more than just a gift. Send him an experience he'll love and can share with you. In fact, don't just order one. Get 2 Dads Want Steaks packages. One for him and one he can share with you. Just go to omahasteaks.com and type Rick Smith in the search bar and get the Dads Want Steaks package. You won't regret it. I guarantee it.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So we've been hearing a lot about especially from our Q friends, about how the Democrats are pedophiles and groomers. And yet, oddly enough, all the stories we keep seeing coming out about actual pedophiles and groomers just happen to be Republicans. It's very odd, very odd. But again, it goes back to something my mother always said: when somebody points their finger at you, there's those other 3 pointing right back. This is kind of it. I'm looking at North Dakota. Interesting. State Senator Ray Holmberg is his name. Evidently, he's not commenting on the AP report that there's an ongoing investigation into his possible text messaging back and forth with a guy in prison for child porn. He's announced plans to resign. I guess that's going to happen tomorrow. Not sure why. 6 months ahead of his term. Not sure why all of a sudden he's just going to resign out of nowhere. But, the possibility of him exchanging texts with a child porn guy, maybe that's got something to do with it. Who knows? Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the pedophiles and the groomers and all of the other insanity. I've asked my good friend Pete Dominick to come talk with us. Pete is the host of Stand Up with Pete Dominick, one of my favorite podcasts. Also a fabulous stand-up comic. Pete, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, always great to be with you. Thank you for asking me, and thank you for the most uncomfortable introduction in the history of my career. Joining us now to talk about pedophiles, pronounced the British way, making it that much creepier. Pedophile expert, Pete Dominick. I mean, thank you, Rick.
That's the best I could do for you, man.
I am really flattered. I've done a lot in my career, but talking about this issue really is what I want to be known for.
It's way up there. It's at the top, man.
I want to get speaking fees. Joining us to talk about the hypocrisy of those claiming everybody's a pedophile critic expert, Pete Dominick.
See, this is the reason that I brought you on, because this is not a funny topic.
Yeah.
But I'm laughing at myself now because I'm looking at this going, it's so ludicrous. There's got to be something funny here before I scream.
When people are constantly pointing to stranger danger and pedophiles around every corner, and being a bald white guy has never helped for me. I mean, I used to take my kids to the park. I'm the only dad in the park, and I got this head, I got this creepy gummy smile, and my daughters get like 10 feet away from me. It looks like I'm just hanging out at a park, Rick Smith. Nobody wants to see a guy who looks like Gollum and Steve Buscemi had a baby hanging out in the park. But the point is about that, I'm awesome with kids. I'm legitimately awesome with kids. I'm so good with kids that after I meet a friend's kid, I spend time with them. I meet them wherever they're at, whatever age they're at. And I get down to their level. I communicate with them. I like kids sometimes more than adults. They're fun. They're easy. They're interesting. They make me laugh. And then the friend says, Pete, my kid's still talking about you. I love that. I should have been a teacher, really. But the point is, I have no problem saying that. Yeah. I'm completely comfortable talking about my comfort with children, including, 2 of my own. And when you see people constantly pointing to pedophiles around again, to me, it's a red flag that something's going on in their house, in their community, and likely in their religious institution, if we're going to really cut to the truth of it.
Right. No, to your point, my daughter, came to your studio in New York a couple of times. Still talks about, how funny you were. You still talks about your Trump voice. You made a huge impression on her.
I rubbed her shoulders for about an hour.
No, you didn't.
Oh, that was who that was? That was Ray Liotta's kid. Too soon. No, your daughter, your daughter, I think when I met her, she was and is, I guess is that works, around my daughter's age. And so I knew kind of where she was at. She's there with her dad. I make all that connection. You welcome them wherever they're at, and you meet them where they're at. And then you pass along what you've learned about how to relate to kids at different age levels. But this idea that, what we're hearing constantly from the right in America and media and now in politics is that if you're a good person who, by the way, works with kids like teachers do, then you are somehow by default doing something horrific, which is, the worst thing. One of the worst things you could be accused of. And I've been accused of it in different ways at different times because that's what they do.
Yeah. No, it is what they do, because for some reason, it's all they've got on the brain. I look at this Marjorie Taylor Greene thing. I mean, it's kind of crazy that all they think about is sex. And I'm not quite sure why. Other people's sex, not even their own. Maybe if they focused on themselves, maybe they'd be decent people. But she came out and she's getting a little attention for this. She says, about the left, about people like you and me, I guess. They just want you to think that all of a sudden the entire population is subtly turning gay or turning trans, just generation. Probably in 4 or 5 generations, she says, no one will be straight anymore, Pete. Everyone will either be gay or trans or non-conforming or whatever the list of 50 or 60 different options are. Now, this is from the woman. This is from the woman who thinks she gets petri dishes from a peach tree.
Yes. Yeah. It's really tough. You almost feel bad for someone on such a, being a comedian, being a broadcaster, I have made just horrific, embarrassing, awful errors in speech. I once was reading a New York Times column, thus trying to sound smart to my audience, and I'd like to read something from today's New York Times. And I pronounced the word egregious. I pronounced it egregious. That's what I said on the radio to a lot of people. I said egregious. My producer at the time immediately called me out and made fun of me, which is right.
And that's what you do.
But like, yeah, that's what you do. And you admit this is a congressperson. I mean, she is constantly getting these kinds of references completely mangled. But the idea that she's concerned. I don't even know that we can talk about her concern about the future of sexuality. I mean, I wish we were there now. I wish we were all tangled up in a naked mess, Rick. I do. I wish you were here and I was, and whoever else wants to listen and they show up. We wear masks because we have reputations. It's like an eyes wide shut thing. But who loses is the question. I mean, we're always going to procreate is what I'm trying to tell you, Rick. There's always going to be. I'm here to say that I don't know what the future holds for sexuality, whether it's heterosexual, what it's going to be called. But I know that there's going to be traditional heterosexual sex until the sun burns out. And I know that because I am mostly heterosexual except for one plumber. And listen, I wasn't expecting to feel the way I felt. I don't think that makes me anything but heterosexual. We didn't do anything, but I asked him to stay longer than was allotted time because I didn't want him to leave. Anyway, I am here to tell you we heterosexuals are not going anywhere. And I want to speak for men who make love to women and women who make love to men. And by just saying this, I think it's great. I really think it's great. And good luck with it, everybody.
And good luck with it. But my part in this is, who cares? I mean, I don't really care what consenting adults do within the confines of their
that's
four
always
walls.
been
None of my business.
Well, you talk about this in many different ways on your show. It's the difference between them and us is control, wanting to control other people. They'll make the argument that's what government is, but of course government is the people. They want it to be authoritarian control, their way or the highway. They zero-sum game everything, and we're saying live and let live. Have sex as long as nobody gets hurt. But it's about control, and it's obviously I always go back to religion, especially in this country, the foundational, fundamental Christian, mostly religion here, and it's true of all fundamental religions. But that's where the control stuff comes from too, and it's all run by men for men. I just watched that movie, the Last Duel. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Oh wow, there's a lot of that patriarchy stuff. Granted, it's 1300. It's 1300 France, the 12th century, and here's the thing. We're back to that, seemingly, with some people wanting to have this kind of patriarchy, this religious patriarchy.
You know what? They had gay people back then, I'm told.
Yes, they were tangled. There was always a tangled up mess. And by the way, in that movie, you get to see Ben Affleck and a lot of other handsome actors in a tangled up mess.
Yeah, that doesn't do it for me. But I guess if he looks like your plumber, then God bless you.
Oh, he had a ponytail, he had tattoos, he had the thick arms, Rick, like yours.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with comedian Pete Dominic. Make sure you check out his podcast, Stand Up with
knows
Pete.
How to fix pipes like you on your trucks, and you probably have pipes on your trucks. You probably fix them, so you know who else fixes them? My plumber. So we had another plumbing issue. We had another, and I got my wife's like, oh, we got to fix this drain. I was like, I can't do it, but you know who can? So I called up and I requested my guy. But they told told me they were a national outfit.
Oh.
You know.
So I guess the big question: did your wife watch?
Well, if I'm gonna be honest with you, my daughter was there. She's 17. We both had a similar feeling about this guy. And immediately, she's like, "Who is that guy?" I'm like, "I don't know, but I'm gonna ask him to stay a while." What is happening to me? Yep.
See now this is why JD Vance wants to ban porn, to save families like yours.
Yes. So what is this, Rick? Tell me what's going on here in Ohio. The Republican nominee for Senate, JD Vance, has come all the way around the bend a few times now, twisting and turning, saying whatever it will possibly take to get the most extreme, crazy people to support him.
Yeah, well, this was an article. He did an interview, I guess, back in 2021 for Crisis Magazine, where he came out and said, the porn, the abortion, they've created a lonely, isolated generation of people who aren't getting married, and this we got to get rid of this porn to save the family. Yeah. So this is his basic premise. So this has now come out. And my thought when I first saw the story is I'm like, okay, well, what are all the conservative states going to do? Because we know from research that those conservative religious Christian states are the biggest consumers of porn. What is Utah going to do?
Well, the porn issue here is Utah. Utah has, I don't know if you know this, there's the strategic oil reserve, and there's like secret bases inside mountains and stuff,
Yeah.
In Utah, they have a mountain filled with VHS porn.
See, I don't doubt that, a strategic porn reserve.
The strategic, the SPR. So it's similar to the gun issue. Like, I wish we didn't have any guns. I'd love to ban guns, but I'm also a pragmatist. I'm a realist, and I also like to shoot guns. By the way, I've shot a lot of guns. I get it. But
did you go with the plumber?
No, but I would. I'd go anywhere with him. I'd go to a country music show. I'd go to things I would never go to just to hang out with him.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. So there's too many guns, right? You can't get rid of the guns. We could talk about gun buybacks. We can talk about the same problem is with porn. I mean, you're not abolishing porn. There's going to be new porn created. It's probably going to be mostly in the Netherlands, which I'm fine with. And all of the current porn is like the guns. You can't get rid of it. Rick, I have a storage space filled with hard drives, Rick. Old hard drives. And all that's on it is obviously just family photos. I don't know what you're thinking. But
I wasn't thinking anything.
You can't get rid of the porn that exists, and you can't get rid of the guns. And certain things we have to be realistic about, and certain things are just being said to get people fired up and get their votes. But this JD Vance, he at this point, what hasn't he said? I mean, this guy, you have to wonder how someone like that sleeps. He can't possibly feel he's. If you look at JD Vance from above, like if he walked under a bridge or something, you see he is a hollow barrel, Rick Smith. Just how you can see right through him. There's nothing in there.
Well, I mean, it's the whole Trump movement. I mean, there's no core anything other than worry about what everybody else is doing. And this is what bothers me about the direction that we're going in this country. Nobody seems to be all that concerned about themselves. They're worrying about what everybody else is doing. And personally, I don't care what you do with the plumber. That's between you, the plumber, and your wife. That, God bless you. And if you, the wife, and the plumber want to do whatever it is you do within the confines of your four walls, God bless you.
We want to build an outdoor shower together. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
As long as it's got walls.
Yes, of course. I don't want the neighbors to see.
That's right.
Any of this. Yeah, it is obviously, but it all goes back to, it always goes back to religion and patriarchy, and it's all there. It's been so well researched and written about by so many great authors. I've had so many of them on my show. Catherine Stewart, Sarah Posner, and of course Jeff Charlotte. I mean, it's just so well documented. This has been going on for a very long time, this religious driven agenda, and now you just have all of these posers that aren't at all religious.
Yeah.
But they hop on board and they use all of this stuff. It's just crazy that we're at a point in 2022 where people are talking about the kind of, putting people back in the closet, getting rid of contraception, abortion, no abortion, even in cases of rape or incest. The right has moved so far into this religious authoritarianism that I don't know how we continue on as a nation. We're just going to keep fragmenting, and it's just going to be how it happens.
And they're so much better at pushing policy. I mean, I look at Tennessee that just in the process of doing away with their marriage age, as long as a preacher says it's okay. And yet you look at, it's the preachers who are doing all of this. I grew up in the Catholic Church going, there's a lot of stuff going on here. And now you've got the Southern Baptists, whatever they are, and all of the 250 pages of names of people who had done things with people underage, kids,
We're just a few weeks away from them suggesting we ban kites and dancing in the town square. I mean, it's American Taliban. It is what it is. It's just it's our version of that. And you see it constantly, being proposed as policies in Republican state houses. And then in the meantime, in Democrat state houses run by Democrats, or what I call Earth One, where we can't agree on the solutions, but at least we identify a lot of the same problems as being, real, like climate change. I mean, we're having a completely different policy conversation. And then, of course, the question becomes, what does the Gilead Supreme Court decide with what blue states want to do for women, for black folks, for all kinds of other issues, climate and so on?
Yeah, that's going to be the fun of the next couple of years. And, I've been saying for years, they're going to take us back to the good old days of the 80s and 90s and not the 1980s and 90s.
No, right. Yeah, we're headed back to the Crusades, I think. And it's just, we have to fight. So here's the thing. In my town, we just won the 2 open BOE seats. We won. It is, Rick, by far the greatest thing I've ever been a part of, was this campaign for Board of Education in my town of Clarkstown, New York. We were up against these anti-CRT, anti-DEI, Black Lives Matter are terrorists, type of folks and rhetoric that also were conspiracy theorists around COVID during that at the BOE meetings. And we organized the way that you hear about. We had so many people doing so much. And I should even say not that many people, but it mattered. And it was the triumph of my life in a way, this little election. And I made new friends, and I'm inspired, and I'm invigorated. And for the next 3 years, my daughter's in high school for 3 more years, we're going to have these 2 men on the board in a campaign run almost entirely by women that are going to be able to hopefully steer the ship the right way. And that matters. It certainly matters for my community. We saved hundreds of families that would otherwise be marginalized and discriminated against in my town. And so I take a lot of motivation from that experience, and I offer it to your audience and mine as much as I can. You can make a difference. And if you don't, I promise you Steve Bannon will. I promise you that. Yeah, no, right there. Participatory democracy in action. Get involved, make new friends, and make change. That's it. And I guess last question, was one of the 2 guys on the board the plumber by any chance? Well, he doesn't live in a district. I reached out to him to see if he would be interested in running. And by running, I mean going for a jog with me, shirtless. And then maybe if he wants to run for board. But unfortunately, he lives in a different district. And I think he might be happily married, too. I'm not sure. That's all right. All right. But that's never stopped me, Rick. There you go. Before. Great stuff, Pete. I appreciate the time. Fun talking with you. Great stuff. Make sure you check out the Stand Up with Pete podcast, one of my favorite out there, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much, Pete. Thank you, Rick. Always a pleasure, my friend. Good stuff. But he makes me laugh. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. Are you tired of think tank approved
corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. I gotta tell you, I love him. He's such a good guy. Makes me laugh every time. We used to go out to New York and be on his show when he was on Sirius XM, and he was just fantastic with my kids. And great guy. And check out the podcast, Stand Up with Pete. Really, really good stuff. But this is the weird world that we live in. The people who are the ones who are just stuck in this place of we need to ban what other people do, yet they're the ones doing it. This is the part that I'm trying to get to. And it's because they want to ban it for themselves. They don't have the kind of self-control to say, you know what, I'm not going to abuse whatever this is. And this is one of those weird kind of moments where we should have a conversation around, access to this kind of stuff. Should it be as easily accessible? Because look, you don't want kids getting a hold of this stuff, just like I don't want kids getting a hold of guns. But I'll tell you this, my friends. If I got a choice between my teenage kid getting his hands on, some porn on the internet, or one of these AR-15s or something, and the information to go along with it to go shoot up the school, I'm going to side with the porn. I think I'm going to go there, because the only rounds he's going to be shooting off are not going to be all that deadly, and there's not going to be never mind. I was going to say there was not going to be a mess to clean up, but that's too far. But this is one of those moments where we have to have these conversations around, societally, what should be available to whom, and if guns can't be part of that conversation, if you're going to blame video games and rap music and porn and that's the real problem, it's the antidepressants. And look, do I believe that we prescribe antidepressants way too often? Yeah, I think so. I think we've convinced ourselves as a society that, the Dr. Melfi quote from Sopranos, with today's pharmacology, no one needs to be unhappy. I don't believe that. I believe, that sometimes in life, you're not going to always be happy. Sometimes, got to work through some stuff. I think this dependence on drugs, not a great thing. Is it causing all of our shootings? I don't think so. But again, if let's say it does, let's say it causes those kind of thoughts, having easy accessibility to a murder weapon without any real safeguards, I don't know. I think it's a deadly combination. Something maybe we should talk about. If you're really going to throw that out there as the cause, as the reason, maybe have the full conversation. Not every issue is a game of 3-card Monte. Not every issue is a sleight of hand. Some issues need to have actual discussion and debate. That's what's supposed to happen in Congress. And I don't know how you do that with someone who thinks Petri dishes come from peach trees. Not quite sure how that happens. Now, like Pete said, look, there are some times where I've butchered some words and I've laughed about it. I can't believe I just said that. And you've heard me say that. Did I just say that? Yeah, I did. I really boogered that word up because I knew better. We have seriously got to have these kind of moments where we talk about issues. And we don't have the serious people in Congress to do that. We need it. Where are our statesmen and women? Where are the people who are really going to fight for sanity, good policy, good governance, especially when one of the political parties hates government? Just my thought. Love to hear yours. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. And if you miss any of our program, make sure you download the podcast. Always available wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And if you don't have a place, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.